For more than 2 decades, Graham Norton has built his reputation on a specific kind of alchemy. Take several strangers, usually famous, often nervous, sit them together on a red sofa, pour some wine, and let the conversation find its own shape. More often than not, it works brilliantly. The format has made Norton one of British television's most enduring hosts, beloved for his ability to coax stories out of people who'd rather be anywhere else and to turn a dull anecdote into a viral moment through sheer comic timing. But Norton himself has been unusually candid across various interviews and literary festival appearances over the years about the nights it didn't work at all. Unlike a lot of talk show hosts who keep their cards close, Norton has named names, sometimes with affection, sometimes with real bluntness. Here's what he's actually said, drawn from his own on-the-record comments rather than the most famous of Norton's worst guest stories involves Mark Wahlberg, who appeared on the show in 2013 alongside Michael Fassbender and Sarah Silverman to promote his film Broken City. Speaking at the Henley Literary Festival in October 2025, Norton recalled that Wahlberg didn't seem drunk when he arrived, telling stories about the film and stunts going wrong, before it was only 15 minutes into the show when whatever the hell was in his system really took hold. And it was hell. What followed has become one of the show's most replayed clips. Wahlberg repeatedly interrupted Silverman's stories, at one point sliding down the couch toward her before getting up entirely and sitting on Norton's lap, hugging him and stroking his chest while Norton laughed it off on camera. Behind the scenes, things were apparently more fraught than the broadcast let on. It reportedly got bad enough that producer Graham Stewart had to wake Wahlberg up at one point, and the team genuinely worried they might not be able to air the episode at all. Stewart later told Metro, "We've never been in a situation where we thought we can't put that show out. We never let that happen." The detail Norton tells most often, and the one that's become something of a legend among fans of the show, is the ending. Fassbender was midway through a story, and for once nobody was interrupting, which Norton initially took as a good sign. At one stage, Michael Fassbender was telling a story, and this one was going quite well. He was really getting into the heart of the anecdote. "I thought, this one's going well, I wonder why, and I looked over at Mark Wahlberg, and he was asleep," Norton has recounted. In another telling, on This Morning, Norton put it even more bluntly. "We couldn't get any stories going. I was like, wow, this must be a good story because Mark Wahlberg is letting him tell it, and he was asleep. We didn't wake him, we were delighted." Norton has also used the Wahlberg story to push back on a popular theory about the show, that producers deliberately ply guests with alcohol to engineer better television. "If you ever see a drunk person on the show, it's because they've arrived drunk. We have not made that happen," he said. Norton has elaborated elsewhere that there's a drink waiting for guests if they want one, but realistically only 2 or 3 at most before filming, meaning anyone who turns up properly drunk has arrived that way. Despite the chaos, the relationship doesn't appear to have soured permanently. Wahlberg has returned to the show multiple times since the 2013 incident. Norton has placed Mickey Rourke in similar company to Wahlberg when discussing guests who arrived already worse for wear. Norton has specifically cited Rourke as another challenging, intoxicated guest who arrived having already drunk half a bottle of Jack Daniels. Attitude, but where Wahlberg's appearance became chaotic and oddly endearing. Norton has described Rourke's as something closer to a slog. Mickey Rourke, he was just exhausting because he wanted to smoke all the time. I'd turn away for a second, turn back, and he'd have lit another cigarette. It was so boring. You feel like a teacher taking children on a school trip, not a chat show host, Norton said. The picture that emerges isn't of a guest causing a scene so much as one who'd simply checked out, present in body, but giving Norton almost nothing to work with, forcing the host to do most of the heavy lifting just to keep the segment moving. For a long stretch, before Norton found a darker answer to the worst guest question, his go-to story was Robert De Niro. Not for any bad behavior, but for being, by Norton's account, a strangely flat presence on a show that runs on energy and momentum. At the Cheltenham Literature Festival, Norton recalled De Niro starting what seemed like it might be a great story. Last time he started telling a story, he went on and on. We were all leaning in, willing it to be amazing. It wasn't. According to Norton, De Niro rambled on so long and so incoherently that he eventually stopped himself mid-anecdote to ask, "Why am I telling this?" The segment was quietly dropped before the episode aired. It's a quietly funny story precisely because there's no villain in it, just two professionals discovering, on camera, that the story wasn't going anywhere, and neither of them quite sure how to escape it gracefully. Less widely circulated than the Wahlberg or Weinstein stories, but just as directly sourced, is Norton's account of interviewing 1970s pop idol David Cassidy in 2003. This one stings a little differently because Norton has been open that it came from a place of real personal disappointment rather than simple professional frustration. "I loved him when I was a teenager, and then you meet him, and he's so bitter and weird, not a happy time," Norton said on This Morning with Eamon Holmes and Ruth Langsford. "I think David hates that he was David Cassidy." It's a notably more wistful complaint than the others on this list. Less about chaos or disengagement, and more about the gap between a childhood idol and the person Norton actually met. Interestingly, when fans rewatched the footage after Norton's comments resurfaced, opinion was divided. Plenty thought Cassidy seemed simply annoyed by Norton's antics rather than genuinely bitter, a reminder that these assessments are Norton's own subjective read on the room. Cassidy passed away in November 2017. This is the story that carries real weight, and it's worth being precise about it, because Norton's own account is more specific and more damning than the dramatized versions that tend to circulate in clip compilations. Speaking in Dublin in 2022 to promote his book Forever Home, Norton was asked who his least favorite guest had ever been. "I often talk around who my least favorite guest was, but someone reminded me, I have a really good answer to this now," he said. "It's Harvey Weinstein. He's in jail, so he gets the prize for the worst guest ever." Weinstein appeared on the show in a 2015 episode alongside David Tennant, Olivia Colman, and Jessie J, years before the investigative reporting that led to his downfall. What makes Norton's account unsettling in hindsight isn't the interview itself, so much as how the booking came about. Norton recalled that Weinstein had emailed him directly, asking to be on the show. "He emailed me something very nice, a complimentary thing," Norton said, and then he decided he wanted to be on the show because he was going to promote something. When the booking didn't happen right away, Weinstein simply kept pushing. And he emailed back again, "But I think," and I just had to turn to my booker and say, "Can you please deal with this?" At the time, Norton read this as nothing more than ordinary industry persistence. "At the time, I thought that sort of attitude, that kind of, oh no, I'm going on, that is what makes you a very good producer," he said. It's the reassessment. Looking back, that's the actual point of the story. But of course, now that we know what we know, that is what makes him a predator. It was that kind of weird tunnel vision thing. And it was sort of chilling in retrospect because I was just laughing at those emails. But you realize, oh my God, that is an insight into how that man is. Weinstein is currently serving a 23-year sentence following his 2020 conviction on 2 counts of rape and sexual assault in New York. Norton's comments were never really about the on-air conversation itself. By most accounts, that part was unremarkable. The point he's made repeatedly is that a single pushy email exchange about a talk show booking turned out, in retrospect, to be a small, visible sample of the same entitlement and refusal to accept no that defined a much larger pattern of abuse. Several names that circulate widely in worst Graham Norton guest video compilations, including dramatized, scene-by-scene accounts involving Kevin Costner and Daryl Hannah, don't have reliable, on-the-record sourcing behind them in the way the 5 stories above do. That doesn't necessarily mean nothing happened. It may simply mean those particular claims trace back to speculation or unverified retellings rather than something Norton has said directly in an interview or at a public event. If you come across a primary source for either of those, a transcript, a direct quote, a clip, it would be worth weighing that account against this one rather than taking the dramatized version at face value. What's notable, taken together, is how rarely Norton's worst guest stories are actually about cruelty or hostility. Most of them are about mismatched energy, a guest who's had too much to drink, one who's simply checked out, one who can't quite land a story. The Weinstein story stands apart for being the one case where Norton himself has drawn a direct line from an uncomfortable professional memory to something far more serious. And he's been careful, in his own retellings, to frame it that way rather than treating it as just another funny anecdote about a bad night on the sofa.